Hello, I'm Mayor Mike Walsh, and I'd like to welcome you to the Mayor's Corner, being brought to you from the Crest Family Library in downtown De Pere. This is a monthly program where we will be providing you with information about city programs, pertinent issues, and things that may be of interest within the community. I will be interviewing individuals in an effort to give a first-hand perspective of concepts, ideas, and involvements of a particular subject. Before we get started, I'd just like to explain that this is the first new Mayor's Corner since October. The reason was due to the fact that I had a hip resurfacing and wasn't able to do the program. I'd like to thank all of you who wished me a speedy recovery, and I really appreciate your well wishes. Our topic today is snow removal, and joining me is De Pere Street Superintendent Al Luberda. Welcome, Al. Thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, like when you started your employment with the city and what your background is?
Sure. I've been with the city now for 15 months. My title, as we know, is Street Superintendent. Prior to that, I worked for the Village of Alloway for 13 years.
Being that it's January, February, and by now everyone's thoughts turn to snow, I thought it would be a good idea to give everyone a better perspective as to what happens to the city's snow removal operation. I know as street superintendent, snow removal is just one aspect of your duties, but a very significant one. Could you kind of tell us a little bit about what the city's policy is when it comes to snow plowing and ice control?
Sure. The city's policy is we do not plow the streets unless there's 3 or more inches of snow. And if there's less than 3 inches at that time, we have what we call primary and secondary roads. And the primary roads might get plowed, depends on how much snow is on. And otherwise, we just salt intersections, hills, and curves.
Based on the fact that we get various amounts of snow throughout the winter, what does city staff do to plan for a major snowstorm?
Well, we look at weather reports very closely on our computers. We have weather services that we watch, and then we try to make a plan to see if it's a significant amount coming or if it's just like a dusting or ice. And I speak to like City of Green Bay too. We're in contact a lot with each other, and we try to make a determination when it's going to come, how long the duration is going to be of the storm, and then how much the storm is going to drop upon us for snow amounts. And then in that thing, then we turn our plans to our equipment by trying to preset our equipment up so our equipment is set to go when a storm does approach us. So,
I know in the past couple of years the city has gone to doing a little bit on pre-treatment of streets. Could you kind of give us a little bit of an idea what that is?
Sure. That's called salt brine. And what that does is like we can treat on the streets for up to 3 to 4 days prior to a storm. And what we do is we put a brine on the road, and then in turn that brine will dry on the road. And what that does is then when a snow or ice hits, that does not let that product bind to the pavement. So, and actually then too, it melts a little bit of that before it starts making the road slippery. And then that in turn gives us time to react to the storm. And we can put that brine down at a really low cost to the city. And studies that I went to, and not studies that I went to, but classes that I went to, it said in nationwide that you put brine down on the street, in the first hour of a storm, there's 80% less accidents.
Well, that's pretty significant. Have you noticed that since you've put it on in the city of De Pere?
Yes, and like when the storm first occurs, you can see that, you know, you don't get that initial slipperiness right away. That it gives us more time to get our bigger trucks out and to hit the streets with the salt.
I've had a number of people ask me, I think like before the last snowstorm, why our streets were wet. And so that is the reason why the streets are wet.
Yes, and it usually takes about, they say about 40 minutes for that to dry.
So it holds the salt on the roads better, because when we used to put it on just with a truck, the snow would bounce all around and could go, you'd lose part of it, correct? Correct.
And then this portion, the anti-icing is just a liquid, and then that is getting into the new thing that we're going into this year too, is what's called pre-wetting the salt. And what that is, that's a liquid tank that's added to the truck, and then as the dry salt is coming off the truck, we're putting this moisture on the salt, and that makes the salt stick and plus it activates it, and then plus you can use less material at that time when you're doing that process.
Well, I know you had a lot to do with this research, and you're pretty instrumental in getting it going in the community. How many trucks do we have for this?
Right now we have one truck that has the tank on it, and it's a 1,000-gallon tank. And we approximately put that down at 50 gallons per lane mile. And right now we're in the process of bidding out to put the other liquid tanks on 6 of our trucks.
How far in advance of the storm do you put it on?
We try to do the day before.
Okay. And so it lasts that long?
Yes. And then the big thing too is we can't do it all the time because the road temperature can't be colder than 15 degrees. If it's colder than 15 degrees, we have to add more chemicals. That has a lot to do with it too because of the temperature of the road. It's not the temperature of the air, it's actual temperature of the road.
I see. I know with this process, the city will save money. Do you have any idea what the savings would be?
Well, we've been trying to do a lot of things to save money, especially in salt, because we all know salt is no good for our environment. So we've started this last year, we started calibrating our salters. And which that means is we'll only let them put so much salt down. And we noticed a big change in that because when we checked some of our calibrations of our trucks, we lowered them like half of that what they were prior. And now, like say we're putting down 450 pounds per lane mile of salt right now. And we did some testing with some equipment from local vendors here where we could add the pre-wetting, and we already learned that we can turn that down again half of that to around the 200 to 225 pounds per lane mile. So actually we got a possibility of using half the amount of salt we were using before.
And as we all know, salt costs are going up.
Correct.
So do you know what we pay for salt at this point?
Right now we're paying $51.36 a ton for salt.
Well, that'll be a significant savings for us then.
Yes.
Yeah. Do we make our own salt brine?
Not at this time. At this time, the Brown County Highway Department has a brine maker, which they have out in their Howard location. They are letting us purchase brine from them at this time until we get our own brine making machine.
Do you have any idea as to what the cost will be for us to start up this operation of making our own salt brine?
Basically, the cost that we're budgeting for is around $100,000 for total cost for adding the brine maker, installing it, adding the tanks that we'll need to store the brine in, and that will probably last the city for at least 30 years. That we'll be able to, use that brine maker throughout that duration before they'd have to do a replacement or something. That the average life expectancy of a brine maker is around 30 years. So.
Okay, right now we put on salt basically at intersections and on curves.
And hills.
Correct,
also.
And hills.
Yes.
With the pre-wetting, do we expand that, or is it just in certain areas that we do the pre-wetting?
We'll pre-wet the salt basically in all those areas that we salt. Plus then, like on our primary routes, which we have primary and secondary routes, the primary routes get a lot more salt because that's where traffic's always flowing on. So,
once the city determines that all streets have to be plowed, how does it determine what is plowed and what equipment will be put out onto the street?
Well, if we for equipment wise, if we go out where we just have to salt our primaries and then all of our secondary streets, which are hills, curves, and intersection, we send out 6 trucks at that time, 3 on each side of the river, and they each have their own route in which we give them a booklet in each truck that they follow that route that they salt at that time. But then if we run into an event that's more than 3 inches, we make a plan, we set up equipment, and we go out what we call full force, and that's with all the snow removal equipment that we have in the city.
Some people may think that plowing is done strictly by street department employees, but that's not true, is it?
No, it's not. We do not have enough employees in the street department to fill all of our equipment. We'll have to get personnel from Park and Water and the Mechanics Division to help us out to fill that equipment. How
long can a driver be out on the road plowing? Because we do have some pretty significant snowstorms, and they need to be out there for quite a while.
Correct. There is no law that actually says how long they could be out, but we, as a city policy, we try to say 16 hours, and then we should rest them. But a lot of times in a major snow event, we cannot do that because we only have so many people. And if we want to keep the roads open, they'll go beyond that sometimes, but we try to do a 16-hour rule.
Is that in addition to the regular hours that they work?
No, it's included in the regular hours. So
if a driver is working the day of a snowstorm and put in 8 hours, and then that night it snows, they can only do a certain amount of plowing?
Right, we try to keep them, another 8 hours of plowing, and then after that, we need to let the driver rest.
In what kind of conditions do you determine to pull them off the road?
Well, what we'll do is we try that we call to get everybody home for the evening. So if you're coming home from work, through that rush hour traffic till 6 p.m., we try to keep all the primaries open and try to keep them safe so everybody gets home. And then after that, I'll try to make a decision and say, okay, I check my weather service. The snow is going to be ending probably approximately like 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. So then I'll make a determination, okay, we have 6 inches of snow on the ground at this time. So I know I'm going to have to bring in full force. So then I'll let all the drivers know at that time we're all coming in at 11 p.m. full force to plow this event. And so I'll notify the Brown County Dispatch and tell them, say, I am pulling off all the equipment at 6 o'clock tonight, and we'll be returning 11 p.m. at full force.
It's really kind of a logistics problem to get them in and get them out in a timely manner too, I would think.
Correct, because you've got to be fair to the operator too, because you want to try to give them a heads up. Like on a Friday night, like a lot of people go out for dinner and stuff, and so you don't want to be all of a sudden calling them at 10:30 at night and say, hey, I need you at 11 for a full event. We want to try to let them, so they can rest before and to make them safe out there and do their operation correctly.
Would you kind of explain to us how you determine the order in which streets are plowed in the city?
We have what we call as primary and secondary routes, which I can show up here. A primary route is basically a route that everybody uses to reach a destination. And that means if you pull off your street, you hop on a primary route, which I'll just use like a Charles, a Webster Street, a Suburban, a Main Street. And those are all primary routes that when we go out with the 6 trucks, that's the ones that we just hit at that time during the storm to keep the roads open. We may have our plow down, we may have our plow up. It just depends on how much is on the road at that time. And through that duration, throughout a storm, we just hit the primary roads.
So how does a resident know what type of street he's on?
Well, a primary road is basically like if you live on a cul-de-sac or if you live off of a main road, like I'll just use a Charles Street. A Charles Street is a primary, so you can think that runs from all the way from east to west on the east side of De Pere. So that's a primary road that you would pull out of your driveway or pull off your side street to hook to go to a main or to go to the bridge or go out to the highway, or that's how.
So like on the west side it would be like a Grant Street or a Main Street or maybe even 9th Street?
Sure, and like Suburban also is a primary road.
So do bus routes enter into how we plow the city also?
Correct, all bus routes are on primary routes.
Al, are there any special kinds of situations that you have to deal with, like plowing for emergency vehicles or anything like that during a snowstorm?
Yes, that is correct. All through a snowstorm, and then even when we're plowing, through dispatch, they'll call right over our radio and say a rescue squad has to go to a household. At that time, we will get one of our trucks, or our person that is working in that area will hear that, and they'll respond right away and go and clear out that area so our rescue personnel can go to that household. Or if it's a fire, we'll send trucks right away to plow the area. So
you'll probably have to call them off the regular route, have them do the plowing, and then put them back on the route?
Correct.
So that could really lengthen the amount of time it takes to plow a certain area.
Correct.
I'd like to ask you some quick questions about just what your department has to deal with for each snow episode. One is, how many miles of streets does the city have to plow?
Well, we have what we call 107 miles of center lane. A center lane mile is just down the middle of that road throughout the city. So then we have 250 miles of plowing lanes that we plow And then in turn, that works out to be 750 miles because when we go out on a plow event, we take what we call a center cut, and then we have to do 2 outside cuts after that to hit the curb, to get the snow all the way to the curb. So we basically have to take 3 passes down each street to get the snow off the road.
How much is budgeted for the snow removal operation?
In 2011, we have $230,827 budgeted for snow removal.
Does that include overtime?
Yes, it does.
Do you have any idea what a typical year might be with overtime in the snow operation?
We have it budgeted for 2011 of $40,000 for overtime hours.
That's pretty significant.
Yes, it is.
Could you give us a cost as to how much the last blizzard was and how much snow fell during that blizzard?
Sure. That last blizzard we had 11 inches of snow, but we had a lot of high winds during that too, so the snow kept coming back on the road. So that made us, we went out on our primary roads in that event, we hit that 5 times. We had to do 2 full plowing events that we went through the city twice on that event. And then also we had what we call the cleanup of the downtown. We had 2 days of cleanup just in our downtown area, and that's where we had that 480 loads of snow that we pulled out of the downtown area. So to give you a cost on that, in labor hours alone, we had $51,912. What we call equipment costs are not in a budget number, but we track equipment costs for replacement, for how long they last, and actually we use numbers that the state uses for equipment. And that equipment cost in that storm was $83,448. And then what we have too is we track our materials, which is our salt, our sand, or our brine. And in that storm alone, we had material costs of $5,538. And so that storm alone cost $141,199.55.
I think it's phenomenal that we would get 480 truckloads of snow from the downtown, and to have that type of cost for one snow event is just unbelievable.
Yes, and it's very time consuming too also.
Right. How much equipment does the city have at its disposal to plow the streets?
We have, for the streets, we have 15 total pieces of equipment that we use for plowing the streets.
How much, well, I suppose there's a lot of variables that determine whether or not it all goes out.
Correct. If we have the 3 inches or more, basically all of our equipment goes out.
With that many miles of streets, how long does it take to plow the city?
If I can get the crew to come in like around 11 p.m. to midnight time, where basically all the cars are off the streets and the traffic is basically wound down for the evening, it takes us approximately 8 hours to go through the city once on all the streets.
Well, I assume you have that as a goal, but what happens when you're not able to do that at night, and the snow episode comes during the day?
It makes our job a lot more difficult because parked cars, traffic, it just makes our duration a lot longer to get the snow off the road.
What would a typical timeline be with an episode during the day like that?
Well, during the day, it basically all comes out to be that we're in that night to try to get everything cleared up. During the day, it's when the traffic is really flowing hard. I'll just give an instance, the last snowstorm. It started like at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so by 9 a.m., we had the 6 trucks out hitting our primaries to make everything safe. And throughout that day, we went till 6 p.m. with those 6 trucks just to keep our primaries open. And then we would go and hit some of the residential areas with the stop signs. We just try to hit those to make those safe. And then we went till 6 p.m. that night, and that's when we called them off. And then we came back in at 11 p.m. that night with all the equipment. And by 6 a.m. that morning, we had every street cleared off.
So basically during the day, you would have the trucks out plowing the primary streets, and the residential probably wouldn't be hit till later that night.
Correct.
How do we compare time-wise to other communities? Do you have any idea about that?
I think we do really quite well. We make it, we try to strive, our goal is after a snowstorm, if we're out for that whole evening, when you get up at like 6 or 7 in the morning, we strive to have the street plowed. That's what our goal is. So when you get out and you take your snow blower, you have to shovel that. You're only doing it once.
Well, I know some people would probably say that they do it multiple times, but I think our crews do an excellent job at clearing the snow when they have that opportunity. Sometimes for big snowstorms, the city declares a snow emergency. Could you kind of explain what that is, when it's called, and who calls it?
Basically, a snow emergency, what we're basically asking for that is all throughout the day that nobody can park on the city streets. And that in turn lets us do our job, that we're not trying to go around cars, between cars, that we can efficiently go down the street without lifting our plows up, you know, backing around vehicles and stuff like that. So that's why we try to call a snow emergency, which you say trying to plow during the day, when we have those big snowstorms that we can go out and there's no cars in the street. And that's basically what a snow emergency is asking for, that nobody parks on the street.
Is it kind of dependent upon what the amount of snow is and how bad visibility might be?
Correct. That has a lot to do. We'll look in, the forecast is saying, like, I'll just go back to our first storm, our big one this year. We had the 12-inch with the high winds. We asked to declare a snow emergency at that time. We went with the Director of Public Works. We contact you along with the administrator and the police chief. And we tell what we're recommending because this is what we're going to need to do. And at that time then we'll say that, okay, from noon today until noon the next day, we're declaring a snow emergency. So
I know I had to declare quite a few of them last year. It was,
yes.
It was a pretty rough year for everyone involved. And I know once the snow is plowed, there's still another aspect of the snow removal operation, and that's the removal of snowbanks from different areas of the city. Could you kind of give us an idea about how this part of the operation is done?
Sure. After we get all the city streets plowed after a big snowstorm, the next night we'll come in and we will remove what we call our snow from downtown. We'll take off all the downtown streets where, you know, they're trying to park to get to businesses. We remove all that snow. If the snowbank has gotten to be a pretty large snowbank. And we'll do all that, and then throughout that duration after that, we'll start going to areas that have really short terraces. So they don't have much area between the sidewalk and the curb, so any snow there at all, it will be really close to the sidewalk, and we have quite a few areas like that. And then if we have snowbanks that are high by an intersection where cars have a hard time seeing, in which we get a lot of residents that call us in and let us know where those are, and we'll make a list of those, and we'll start removing those also. And this could take up to sometimes a week or two after the storm because we only have so many pieces of equipment, and you know, we only have so many hours a day, and we do not want to add overtime to do that type of work. You know, otherwise our budget would just be right off the wall for how much that would cost. So.
And we don't want to have that happen.
Correct.
I guess what goes into this type of operation, you know, like the type of equipment, how long does it take you to do that type of thing, and how soon do you start after the episode?
Well, I'll just give that first big snowstorm we had this year, which we even said it was a blizzard with all the high winds that we had. After we were finished plowing, we came in the next evening at midnight, and we hauled out of our downtown area streets. We hauled 480 loads of snow off, which we haul off with tandem trucks. And so you can just look at how much snow actually is in the road. And we do that with a snowblower. We have a big snowblower that hooks to our loader. We have two pieces of equipment that go out, which are holders, and they push the snow off the curb into the road. And then we have a grader that comes along and makes a windrow for the snowblower to blow it into the trucks. And we usually have 6 tandem trucks at that time hauling that snow away. And then we have one truck that's behind that because we have that snow all over the road we put again, so we have to move that back off and plus treat that road again with some salt to make it clear.
Where do you haul the snow?
We have 2 snow dumps, what we call, one on each side of the river that we use.
Well, Al, I would guess that of all the services that the city provides, probably snow plowing receives the most concerns from residents. Maybe you could address some of the things that are brought up, and I've got a few of them that I've gotten over the years.
Sure.
What happens when a snowplow hits a mailbox?
All of our operators are instructed if you hit a mailbox, they call on the radio and let me know. They let me know the address of which they hit, and if they hit it with their wing or if the snow just hit it. And then at that time we log that in the office, and we'll send them out a letter saying that we hit your mailbox, and here's the city policy on the mailbox, and which that is we'll refund them up to $50 for that mailbox cost. But if the snow just hits it and it's just an old mailbox that actually we don't hit it with the truck plow itself, we will say that's not really our fault, because that mailbox has to be built to take when snow comes up and hits the mailbox. So that's what I try to go out and I look at all these, and then if a resident asks me this, come and look, I will come and determine if we did hit that mailbox.
Okay. What happens when a plow encounters a car parked in the street with and without a snow emergency?
As we know, where we run into that is during the weekdays, they're not allowed to park on the streets, on the city streets, but on weekends, residents are allowed to park on the streets. So on a weekday, if we can't get through with the snowplow truck, at that time, we will call the police department, and because if we have to plow the street, that car does need to be removed. Otherwise, if we can get around it, we'll just plow around. You'll see that all the time when you're driving around cars that are parked in, and we plow around them if we can. So,
if they have to be towed, do you notify the resident?
I do not. The police department makes that decision.
Okay. What happens if a plow scrapes the grass?
If the driver knows it again at that time, again, we will log that. Otherwise, if a resident will call in spring, and that's when basically that all shows up when the snow goes away, what we'll do is then we'll put that on a list, and at that time we'll take dirt and seed and we'll go and we'll repair that section for the resident.
Probably one of the biggest concerns that I get is that the question is, why doesn't the plow make one pass down the street and then come back and do it later?
What happens then, it just makes everything totally inefficient. If we go down the street, make one pass, we got that windrow sitting in the street then too. When somebody tries to come out of the intersection, they got to try to get themselves through that. So what we do is when we go out on a full event, you say to hit everything, we have our goal of that 8 hours. So we go through the street, through our section, like a section that we have, we try to go through efficiently. We'll start and do right-hand turns throughout that, and we can work our way because everything comes off our trucks on the right-hand side, and that makes us efficient. And for us just to go down every street then come back, it would just take us probably double the amount of time to get the snow plowing done.
So rather than 8 hours, it'd take you 16?
Oh, by sure, easily.
Okay. Another question is, why is all the snow in my yard? I get that a lot, especially in cul-de-sacs.
We have 105 cul-de-sacs in the city of De Pere. It takes us approximately 15 minutes to plow a cul-de-sac. And if everybody realizes when you come into a cul-de-sac, there's no outlets except for the inlet you came in on. And for us to try to push the snow all out of that area and then put it in somebody else's lawn on the next road is we look for an area to push the snow. And just, we don't want to put it by your mailbox. We don't want to put it, too close to your driveway if possible. We look for an area we can pile the snow up, that it's actually not in the way of any of those areas. And I know you do get large piles, but as time goes on, it's not on our priority list, but it's the further on the bottom end of the snow removal. If we complaint driven, we'll go into those cul-de-sacs and we'll remove those big piles of snow.
Do you alternate maybe yards that you put it in, or different areas that you put it in a cul-de-sac?
We try to, but some cul-de-sacs just won't permit us to do that.
Probably because of the size of the truck and
Correct.
the size of the cul-de-sac.
Correct.
Another question is, why doesn't the plow put the blade up by a driveway?
Well, if we lift the blade up, then we're not taking the snow off the road.
Well, sometimes I wish they'd do it at my driveway, but it doesn't happen, I
One,
know.
one thing I'd like everybody to understand is every one of our trucks are equipped with a plow and a wing. What that means, they have a plow in the front, which is an 11-foot plow, and then on the wing on the side of the truck is a 9-foot wing. And that makes us more efficient. That makes us to go down a street 3 times instead of 6 times. So, but you got to think of how much snow is coming off that, because you're taking 19 feet. Well, it's probably 15 feet because of the angles of the blade. You're taking 15 feet of snow off and pushing it, to the side of the road. And as we're going down a road, we can't go that fast, because if we go too fast, we throw all the snow onto the sidewalk. And then in turn, that's another issue. So when you're coming up to driveways, which are openings, so just think when all that snow is going to come off is at the driveways and things like that. So that's just the nature of the snowstorm. So,
You had mentioned earlier, and I just want the people to know that we have 105 cul-de-sacs in the city, and it really makes it difficult because some of the cul-de-sacs were built a long time ago, so they're a lot smaller than some of the recent ones that were built. I just like the people to know that we're not doing it cul-de-sacs when people come in for developments. Mm-hmm. We're not doing that, so it'll make your job easier, and the complaints will probably go down.
A cul-de-sac is not built for snow removal. It's just, that's the easiest way to say it. There's not any good way of removing snow on a cul-de-sac.
Are there streets in the city that the city doesn't plow?
If there's 3 inches or less, we do not plow residential areas.
What about like county? Does the county plow any of our streets?
Yes, you can see on the map here, we have, on the map we'll show this, we have what we call our primary streets. They're all in green. We have our secondary streets, which are basically all the residential areas throughout the city. We have the blue, which that is county. The county is responsible like for Shuring Road, Grant Street. You can just see all the different areas the blue areas that the county is responsible for. So we do not plow or treat those streets.
I know you had said that the city removes snow from corners and our downtown. Do you remove any snow within the residential areas?
Yes, we will. If we have those big piles, like I said, in cul-de-sacs, we'll try to get to them. And if somebody calls in and asks, and if there's a safety issue, especially if they can't see around a corner or something, we will get there and try to remove that snow.
Whose responsibility is it to remove the snow around fire hydrants?
Basically, it's the water department is the ones responsible for that. But we ask all residents, if you live on you have a fire hydrant, if while you're cleaning your snow, if you could just do that, because there's a bunch of cost savings there to us. Plus then, by the time we get to it with the water crew to clear it out, if there's a fire or something at your neighbors or something, that's the last thing you don't want to be able to do is get at a fire hydrant to get at the water to try to save your house. So.
Sure. So it really behooves the residents to help themselves out as well as the city.
Correct.
Over the years, I've had a few questions brought to me that maybe you could answer, like, could you explain why city crews will be plowing city parking lots, city sidewalks, like sidewalks around parks, and alleys before the streets are plowed?
Sure. We have one vehicle that goes out with us on our full events and does alleys. That's a special vehicle. It's called a holder and has a 7-foot blade on it, and it articulates, because our alleys are a lot of them narrow and there are different areas to go. So that will go through all of our alleys on the east and west side. And then the park department has 3 pieces of equipment that they use for snow plowing. One is for sidewalks. It's made especially just to go down the sidewalks, which is another holder with a 60-inch blade on it or a 60-inch snowblower. And then the park has 2 pieces of equipment that they go into park, to where they'll go and do the community center. They'll do the parks in the area. And that piece of equipment is not made to do roads. It's just made to do parking lots.
So really, a park sidewalk could be plowed before the snowplow gets there to do the street.
Correct.
Are your routes set up so that they start say they start at one end and they go to the end of their route, and then the next snowstorm start at the end and go back? Because some people say that, I'm always last or I'm always first.
Correct.
I don't know what the people in the middle say, but at least I get a lot of those types of questions. Could you kind of explain that a little bit?
Well, I'll just show you a route here. What it is the driver that is assigned to this route, he'll come in and start on this corner and he'll work, and what we say is right-hand turns. Right-hand turns are our best turns because that's how we clean our corners. And we try to make loops out throughout the city. And then every intersection is different. They're larger, smaller, where snow ends up. And as time goes on, if we say, okay, now let's go start on this corner, it's like the driver is trying all over again to learn his route. So we're not efficient. So as the third time throughout, say it's the third time that driver's plowing his route, he's going through that route and he's being very efficient because he knows where the snow needs to be put. He's got a system down to where it works through the streets. So for cost-wise, we try to look at an 8-hour period. So sometime after the snow ends, when we go in an 8-hour period, your street will be plowed and we'll do it efficiently. And if we try to come back the other way, we'll be adding more time because that driver will not be out there as efficient as he is coming into the way that he's been working with prior to that.
The way you work it, does a route always have the same driver?
No, it does not. Somebody could be ill, somebody could be on vacation, and there's all different ways that could be, somebody else could be on the route.
I suppose that could cause an issue as far as, you know, where a driver isn't familiar with it, where you just put him on maybe that route for the first time.
Correct.
He could be slower, he may not know where the curb is, he may not get it all the way over there. Do you do anything in that case, or?
Yes, well what we do is at the beginning of the year, before the snow comes, we try to make planning. We make any adjustments to the map if we need to for if roads were added to the city. And then we go through our seniority list because it's seniority driven through our department, and we let the driver pick his area that he wants. And then at that time when we let the driver pick his area, then we'll let him drive that route before the snow is, and he'll set out markers to where curbs are or there's obstacles that he has to go through that route. And then that piece of equipment that we have signed to that area, we will train him if he's never operated before, give him some training, you know, make sure he knows how to operate it properly. And then from there, we just go down the list like that. And with the extra people that we have from the different departments that come in, it's really hard to give them a piece of equipment because that might change each time. But we try to put them in an area that they can be consistently coming if they're coming in for every storm for us. So they'll have that piece of equipment. So then they get better, they get more efficient, and they feel safer driving through that. But sometimes that does not happen. We have, like if a flu bug's going around, all of a sudden we don't have 4 drivers. So that means we're going down through the list with 4 new drivers could possibly be in your area for that snowstorm. And we try to give training to that, but it's still hard just to be consistent through the route each time. That's hard to achieve that unless you do it for quite a few times.
Another question that I get is, why do some streets get plowed multiple times and others only once?
Because they're a primary route. Because like I said earlier, in a snowstorm, if it's going through a duration during the day, we might go hit that primary 3 times during that day. And if the snow is piling up, we will have our plows down going through that primary. But you'll notice that we won't plow it all the way to the curb a lot of times because we're just making that pass up and down. And just to make that clear so you get home safely at night or throughout the day if you got to go to a doctor's appointment or something, we keep those primary routes open.
Another question along that line is, people ask, why would plows go down a street multiple times if they're not plowing it?
And that's where, if we have that smaller amount of snow that we're not required to plow, we just treat it with salt at that time.
People want their streets plowed in a timely manner, so what can residents do to make the snow removal easier for the snowplow drivers?
One thing is, do not have your car in the street. If all possible, put your car in your driveway and do not have your car in the street. And also, if it's a garbage or recycling day that you have for that morning, that the garbage needs to be required out by 7 a.m., don't put it out the night of the snowstorm, because all of our trucks have to slow way down then as we go past, because as soon as that snow will hit those garbage cans or recycling cans, it knocks them over and throws them all over the place. So if you could just like put your cans out early in the morning instead of that evening, that would really help us out also a lot.
I know I rode on a plow a couple of years ago, and I was the one getting out to move those garbage cans because there were a lot of them knocked over, and so I would get out and put them back up. But I'm sure the drivers don't do that when they're by themselves.
Correct. Our goal out at night is to get the snow off the street, and we try to do it in that 8-hour time frame. So if we're doing all these different things, we cannot achieve that.
Al, another aspect of the street department is sidewalk snow removal. Could you explain what that policy entails?
The sidewalks have to be cleared 24 hours after a snow event. That's a city policy. And so 24 hours after, if the sidewalk is not plowed, if there's a complaint that was given about that sidewalk, at that time we will schedule our crew out there to go clean that sidewalk.
A big question that comes up is, how do you know about that? Do we have someone that goes around and checks every sidewalk after a storm?
No, we do not. You would take a city employee a long time to drive around through the whole city to try to make a list of who does not do their sidewalk. And the way budgets are nowadays, I doubt if you'd want to hire another person just to go check sidewalks. So it's complaint driven. That's how the sidewalks work.
So if an individual is out walking and they see a sidewalk that isn't shoveled after, say, 24 hours, then if it's a concern to them, they can call the street department and we'll send someone out.
Correct.
Okay. Who pays for it when the city removes the snow?
The homeowner.
How much does that cost?
Basically, if it's 74 cents a foot if we just remove the snow. It's 94 cents a foot if we have to remove the snow plus put some salt down on it. And also there's a $40 minimum charge.
Okay, so if you have a shorter sidewalk, you would pay, and it's under $40, they would have to pay $40.
$40 is the minimum.
Okay. How does it, how can it be paid for and where can it be paid?
They can mail it in to the MSC, or they can just come by and drop off the, the payment to the, at the MSC, I'm sorry.
And if people don't pay it, it's put on their taxes, correct?
Correct.
How does the city determine when to send out that equipment to remove the snow from the sidewalks? Pretty much after the complaint is?
Correct. It's usually a day or two after the complaint is that we'll be able to schedule somebody to go and remove that snow.
There's a lot of times when we get a lot of snow and we need to take employees from other city departments to help with that snow removal. What kind of impacts do the winter months have on the other city operations, such as garbage and recycling pickup, parks and rec, and the water department?
Sure. Well, like I'll just say for garbage and recycling pickup, actually we get slower during the winter months because people's driveways get narrower, so when they set out their cans, cans are closer to the snowbanks, and we ask to try to keep that 4 feet away, because if an easy example is the arms are this wide and you're going to grab a can, you're hitting the snowbank trying to grab the can. So unless that is away from that snowbank, that slows us way down. And then again, I get a lot of complaints about dropping the can too far in their driveway. But for our arms to open back up, we have to be away from that snowbank also to drop that can back down. So it's very important to place your can with that 4 feet of clearance from any obstacle that you set your garbage can out or your recycling can out for the collection.
Well, Al, if there's any other areas you'd like to cover or anything you'd like to add, I guess now's the time to bring them up.
Well, I just want to say all of us, all the crew, all the personnel, we're out there to make one goal, and that is to make the streets safe, get all the snow to the curb, in a timely manner that we try to do for the resident. And at no times that we're on purpose putting snow in their driveway or on their corner. It's all driven by what the storm is like, how much snow is there. The truck can't turn the corner. I mean, there's so many things that go into effect with this. And we're just out there trying to do our best to get the snow off the road in a timely and safely manner.
And I know sometimes that's a big concern to people, and I think if they just if they have questions or comments, they can certainly just call you up and you can handle it. It may not be to everyone's satisfaction, but at least I know you make the time and make the effort to go out and talk to people and
Correct.
when they have issues.
Correct. And you know, sometimes there is something that we can change to where we push the snow or a little bit different in a method, but majority of the time our drivers are just trying to get the snow off the street, and they're not trying to put that snow in that bad area. So,
well, I'd just like to say that, you know, that the street department and the snowplow drivers do a great job in clearing our streets. It's too bad that our citizens really can't ride along on a snowplow during a blizzard. I have done it, and I have a much deeper appreciation of what they do as a result of that. It isn't an easy job by any means, and I know everyone wants to be the first plowed and the first out, but as we know, you know, that can't always be the case. I think people need to be patient sometimes because the street department does remove the snow as efficiently and as fast as possible. But there's a big difference, like you said, between 3 inches and 14 inches of snow during a blizzard, or even when the snowfall occurs, as to how soon the snow removal operation is started and finished. So I think overall, the community is very fortunate to have the drivers that we do, and I think, like I said, I think they do a great job. I think you do a great job in the planning of a snowstorm, and I think since you've been here, you've increased the awareness of what we do, and I think this program will certainly help with that also. But I think we're just about out of time, so thank you, Al. I appreciate you coming on and providing us with the information about the city's snow removal process, and we hope it provided our citizens with a better understanding of how it's done. So this concludes the Mayor's Corner. This program will be broadcast periodically throughout January and February. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm Mayor Mike Walsh.